Okay friends, hello. So now that the floor and the wall in my workshop space are done, it is time to start focusing on making this feel like a shop space again, starting with something I have wanted for the longest time, a miter saw station. We're getting so close. Okay, I clearly need more storage in here, A, and B, I need to do something with my favorite tool in the shop, the miter saw. So I am going to build a stand for the miter saw that's gonna go on that side of the shop where the lathe used to be. And I'm going to make it have some storage. I also am going to have to get a little creative here because I don't want to spend a ton of money on this, and I have so much 2x2 plywood. Check this out. In an ideal world, I would be building this entire thing out of full sheets of plywood, but I have this whole stack of 2x2 plywood here, and I really don't want to spend any more money than I have to on this build because I'd rather kind of like dump that money into other parts of this project, like ceiling insulation, for instance. Maybe also a new dust collection. Maybe bags of Sour Patch Kids to keep me motivated. I don't know, there are just lots of things I'd rather be pouring that money into than extra plywood. So I think what I'm gonna do is break this build into 3 separate cabinet parts, with 2 of the cabinets being like shorter cabinets on the bottom with a little bit of storage on top. That way I can use up whatever I have here. But that middle cabinet, which is gonna hold the actual saw, that's going to be made from these bigger pieces of plywood, and I think it should work. Let me show you what's in my brain, because sometimes that works better than the words that come out of my mouth. Okay, so we've upgraded here, people. Ignore the measurements, those aren't correct. I've upgraded from a loose leaf paper and some random boxes to actually sketching something out on SketchUp last night on my computer while I was binge watching like really bad reality TV. So this is kind of what I'm going for. This obviously is not a complete picture, but this is a start. So let's get started on building some cabinets. Before we jump on into this project, a huge thank you to my partners over at Rockler for helping me make this dream miter saw station seriously come to life. I have been wanting a miter saw station in my workshop for the longest time, and now that I finally have the space for it, I am so stoked to show you how I made it happen. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I am solely using 3/4 inch birch plywood for this entire build, but as always, you can find a full list of materials and products and tools used for this build on my website, along with printable plans, by clicking on that link below this video. Although this seems like a pretty big build, it's actually just a series of different boxes that were basically different sizes and then screwed together to morph into this giant miter saw station. So pretty much to get started, I just assembled a couple of boxes using pocket hole screws and wood glue, and then cut all of these pieces on my table saw. If you don't have a table saw, you can definitely use a circular saw for a project just like this one. For me, the table saw was just quicker. But in terms of orders of operation, I started with the 2 cabinets on the side of the miter saw station and then worked my way to the cabinet that's going to house the shop vacuum. I actually wanted to stop here but ran into an issue, and you'll see that in a second. Want to see a magic trick? Hope you said yes, because I'm going to show you one anyway. That was really bratty. Sorry. But actually, check this out. 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! I almost fell. I mean, if this whole woodworking and psychology thing doesn't work out, I could totally be a magician on YouTube, right, you guys? Want to see me pull a disappearing act? 1, 2, 3. Nailed it. I know, you guys, a good magician is never supposed to reveal their tricks, but you are in luck today because I am not a good magician. So basically, I built that center cabinet the same way as those side cabinets with pocket hole screws and wood glue, and then I attached them all together using wood screws. But don't be too impressed by my skills yet, because then I realized I messed up. No, I knew this didn't look right. I'm just gonna go home and I'm gonna eat my emotions in my body weight's worth of Sour Patch Kids and then try again tomorrow. Okay, new day, new vibes, new game plan. So basically, I cut these two side pieces too shallow. So now I just don't have enough square footage on the top portion to be able to support my workpiece when I'm cutting. So I was up pretty late last night thinking about how I was going to fix my mistake, because that's just what people do, is stay up super late at night and think about their woodworking projects, right? Basically, you could like never have enough storage, right? So I am going to bump these two side cabinets here up about 5 inches and then build cubby storage behind them so I can store, like, I don't know, scrap wood, tools, stashes of Sour Patch Kids, snacks, whatever. But that way I'm not just like wasting the space behind the miter saw. Now I can actually have some more spaces to store some stuff. So I think this is gonna work. Pretty excited about it. Let's get started. So even though I was kind of bummed that my original idea didn't work out, adding some cubbies to the back of this station just meant even more storage for things, which is a win in my book. Now, since the cubbies had to be on the back side of the build, this meant that I had to close up the back of those cabinet boxes that I created earlier. So before closing them up, I did add some shelf pin hole openings to make adjustable shelving for later. And then once it was time for the cubbies, I actually decided I wanted to do adjustable shelving here as well. So I took some 3/4 inch plywood, drilled some shelf holes into those as well, and then attached the first piece to the back of the cabinet, kind of like a cabinet backing, and then began to add all of the other pieces to this piece to create the box for the cubby. Luckily, the beauty of a build like this is that it is completely modular at this point, so you can add whatever you want to your own miter station if you want to build one. So instead of cubbies, you could do another set of cabinets. You can do a secret door to Narnia. I don't know, you can add whatever you want to this build. However, if you are looking to make the build kind of similar to mine, definitely check out the plans, because those are written out way clearer than all of the things that I'm throwing at you in this voiceover. All right, back to the build. So once I had reattached those side pieces along with the cubbies to the sides of that center box, it was then time to start building my boxes on top of these cabinets. And these are going to act as supports for my workpiece, as well as have a built-in fence to make sure that all of my cuts are completely straight. Now, something to note here, I actually cut and measured these pieces based on the specs of my particular miter saw, and I'm using a 12-inch sliding Makita miter saw. So definitely make sure that if you're building a miter saw station, that you are building it to the specs of your particular saw, because every saw is different. And as you can see, once I was done cutting those pieces, it was time to assemble them in yet another box formation on top of the cabinet and cubby boxes from earlier in the process. I attached the sides to them using pocket hole screws and glue, and then glued and nailed that top piece down into those two supports. I then added a piece of plywood to function as an extension of my miter saw fence, and I basically just checked 1,010 times to make sure that my miter saw and the fence were perfectly square before attaching it to the rest of the cabinet using pocket hole screws. Luckily, I actually did not glue these pieces down. I'm glad I didn't, because I'm probably gonna have to shorten them at some point. You'll see why in a little bit. At this point, though, it was then time to do some heavy lifting. This is about the most of a workout that I get in my daily life. I mean, I don't know if you heard me counting, but I did over 1,000 reps, so. But no, actually, in reality, at this point, it was time to flip the station onto its front, I guess. And I wanted to add some supports to that center cabinet, because this is going to be holding my vacuum for dust collection. And once those supports were in place, it was then time to add the casters that I got from Rockler to the bottom of this miter saw station. But on a serious note, I actually chose these casters because they hold several hundreds of pounds of weight, and I've linked the exact ones that I've used below this video and also on my website, so definitely check them out if you're looking for sturdy and stable casters for the stuff in your workshop. Once those casters were in place, I called in my favorite partner in crime, my little brother Jordan, to come into the shop and help me lift this thing up because it is beefy. We also worked together to get that miter saw permanently into place in its new home, and at this point I kind of just like double and triple and quadruple checked for square to make sure that everything was lining up
before attaching it to the miter saw station and then moving on to adding my dust collection, aka my shop vac. At this point, I was so close to the finish line. The last steps in this project, essentially build-wise, were to add the back panels to those top cubby cabinet drawer things to just make sure that no sawdust got into them when I was cutting. And then once those were in place, I was then able to move on to creating the cabinet fronts for all of the storage. I originally wanted to use drawer fronts for the top little cubby guys, but then decided that I didn't want to make any drawers if we're being really honest here. So I actually decided to add kind of like this false front thing using some magnets, which worked out really well. And after popping those on, it was then time to move on to installing the cabinet doors and hinges. Can I help you? Oh, you think I have snacks? No, these are cabinet hinges. Like you put them on a cabinet door and then the door closes and opens. Yeah. I mean, like, I wouldn't really eat them. I don't think that they're delicious. I actually don't even think that they're edible. I mean, you can, if you don't believe me, you can check them out yourself. I mean, in case anybody is wondering, cabinet hinges are not food, right? So tell them, cabinet hinges are not food. Okay, so now that that's settled, are you guys gonna help me work? Just gonna hang out on my new floor? Okay. You can just hang out on my new floor. This is why I get nothing done. Okay, I see how it is. Bye. Uses me for belly rubs, thinks I have snacks. Go figure. So since my shop helpers just wanted to like use me for love and that's it, I did have to install these cabinet hinges all by myself, but luckily this was a pretty quick process because I have a cabinet hinge jig where I just drill the opening I need for my hinges and then install the hinges in that opening and then install the doors to the cabinets. So while the cabinet hinge assembly was actually pretty straightforward, attaching the doors to the cabinet frames were a little more difficult for me because typically the backs of the cabinets are still open in my cabinets when I'm building them. But because I had to close these up with cubbies, what I did was I took some larger clamps and then propped the door onto the clamp, making sure it was in the exact spot that I needed it to be before drilling it into place with those hinges. Honestly though, this trick worked super well and I can't wait to use it again in future builds. So basically at this point the build is done, but there are a couple of things that I really wanted to integrate into my miter saw station. First one being Rockler's Universal T-Track Kit, because this will allow me to add stops and guides to my miter saw station when I am cutting. Since the tracks are made from aluminum, I cut them down to size on my miter saw and just screwed them into place. I then added my stop, but I did end up swapping this stop out for a longer one. But even so, now that I've been using this for a while, I do think this fence is a little too high, so I'm going to be trimming it down in the future. So earlier in this video, I totally joked about magic, but this part of the project did feel like absolute magic. I've always wanted a miter saw that had a dedicated dust collection system that turned on when I turned the saw on and turned off when I turned the saw off. And now I have that because I was able to pick up an IVAC switch from Rockler's website that allows my tools to do exactly that. Moment of truth. I feel so fancy having this set up now in my workshop. Let's be real, but once that was done, it was then time for finishing touches. I added all of my adjustable shelving to my cabinets and my cubbies and began to load up this baby with some stuff from my workshop. So I'm well aware that the things that I consider my dreams are vastly different from what most people consider to be their dreams. But legitimately, since I started DIY Huntress and had my own workspace, I have been dreaming of having enough space to have a dedicated miter saw station. Fun fact of the day, the miter saw was actually my very first woodworking tool. My dad actually gave me a hand-me-down skill saw when I started getting into woodworking, and since then it has easily been my favorite tool in my workshop. I pretty much use it for every single project. So the fact that I finally have a dedicated space to be able to work with my miter saw in my workshop that also doubles as storage is like so exciting to me. In fact, one of the reasons I had so much fun building this project, mistakes and all, was because it seriously reminded me how far I have come, not only in my woodworking skills, but on this journey and in this space, and I'm just continuing to have fun with it as I go. But on the real, I know I'm getting all sentimental and mushy on you guys here. I really could not have gotten this far in my journey without your support, so thank you so much for just being awesome. I do hope you guys love this project as much as I did. If so, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. There are always 1,000,001 project ideas in this brain of mine, so definitely be on the lookout for more projects in the very near future. But in the meantime, friends, thanks for just being awesomely you, and happy DIYing.